New card. What do you think?
Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
You ain't seen nothing yet. Raised lettering. Pale nimbus. White.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
Hello, and welcome to another collab review. Super Gaff Fest? Yeah, I remember what that means now. Also, don't interrupt me again. Whoa, watch your language. Anyways, this being a Super Gaff Fest means you have a pretty high chance of getting Pantheons. This is similar to the Hatsune Miku Super Gaff Fest from a while back, but this time around, there's slightly more collab units. I'm a pretty big fan of the Chainsaw Man IP, so I was very excited when JP announced it, but the Super Gaff Fest format completely turns me off. I really wish this were a full-fledged collab. So in this machine, you only have about a 40% chance of pulling Chainsaw Man units, and you have a 36% chance of rolling Pantheons, which won't be totally useless in the near future since you can exchange some of them for GFEs or other event units. But please don't roll for Pantheons. So, given that, I don't think it's a good idea to roll in this machine. The fact that NA also skipped Marble also hurts a couple of units here. That impact is not huge, but some would argue that it's noticeable and that it's actually average sized. Above average even. Anyways, this Super Gaff Fest will have two durations, and they both differ by which GFEs are included in the machine. So now, let me go through each Chainsaw Man unit and see if any of them pique your interest. And please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. First up is Arai, who has a decent damage multiplier if you make a cross, and has a decent enough active. The attack and RCB buffs could come in really handy in certain situations. Arai's equip is really good. It actually reminds me of Ida's equip, since it has 3 team HPs and 4 OEs. It doesn't have a skill boost awakening, but you do have effectively 1 skill boost with that void damage active, and in some cases this is much more useful, like in the first floor of Alt UN4. The add balance type awakening is not that relevant, but it could come in really handy if you want to use the next unit as a leader. Kishibe has a very respectable damage multiplier and a pretty good active for rainbow teams, but rainbow teams usually run a looping time buff and roulette unit, so his role in a rainbow team might already be covered and it might be difficult to justify bringing him along. Still, Kishibe is a pretty solid unit, and a fairly decent rainbow leader for balance type units, which I don't think there's that many, since when I hear rainbow, I think of dragon and devil types. Kishibe's equip is really good, as it gives you a 7C, some bulk, and 3 effective skill boosts. Additionally, it also has a defense break awakening, which could come in really useful to deal with high defense spawns in dungeons like Alt UN4 and 5. Next, Angel Devil. He does a respectable amount of damage. He also has a pretty nice looping roulette active that also fixes board shrinkage. The 5% gravity is pretty small, and probably won't be that useful. It would have been better if it were 10% gravity, as I think 90% super resolves are a little more common than 95%, and I can't really think of one right now. Angel Devil is the first unit from this collab that kinda suffers from not having Marble yet, as he is really good for light combo teams. I guess for now he can go in a Christmas Algae team, even though Algae already takes care of the spinner. So I mentioned Marble because of Captain Marble, or Militia, since she's the classic light combo leader, and after her recent buff, Captain Marble was able to clear UN5 when paired with Angel Devil, since he gives you 4x recovery for light attribute units. And I guess down the line, Angel Devil could also be used in Netero teams. I'm a way bigger fan of Angel Devil's equip. This is somewhat similar to Yugi's equip, but it might come in more handy due to its add Devil type awakening and hard TPA. Next is Denji, who is again a 3-unit system composed of BGMs, and he has a whooping 30-turn cooldown transformation active, which will become a little bit more common with units like Muichiro and Netero. Denji's pre-transform active allows you to play with 7x6 boards, and you will need that board size since you'll be wanting to make at least 2 BDPs to deal a good amount of damage. And Denji himself can deal up to 24 billion damage every 3 turns. And his active also generates enough orbs for 2 BDPs. His little skill gives you a lot of bulk, and it scales damage with every dark or red BDP, but it'll be difficult to make more than 2 in a team with 3 Denjis. This is due to the fact that Denji's active overrides any orbs to generate those 9 red and dark orbs. Obviously, this type of active is much preferable if a span floods your board with red and dark orbs, but you won't be able to save orbs to try and make 3 BDPs and do an insane amount of damage. Denji also suffers from NA not getting the Marble Rerun, since this Marble Rerun had a bunch of red and dark BDP units, like Scarlet Witch. Marble also had a cheaper alternative for a second and third Denji. Spidey and Venom are also a 3-unit red and dark BDP system, which were also exchangeable. But since Spidey and Venom are a new unit, even if we get a Gung-Ho Another Story rerun, we probably won't get them. Denji's equip is pretty decent, as he has a bunch of OEs, a skill boost, a BDP, and a Devil Killer, with a 3-turn delay. But it's honestly nothing groundbreaking, so it's probably not a good idea to spend $30 on Denji, unless you really want to play with Denji, and are prepared to roll for 2 more. Another selling point for Denji is the fact that he gives you access to the free Pochita unit, which you can get by clearing the Collab Coliseum with Denji as your leader. Pochita is a cleric with a lot of utility, but I don't think Pochita has that much use. I don't know, I haven't found myself needing to use a unit like Pochita in a team. It also sucks that Pochita can't be limit broken, and therefore doesn't have any super awakenings. I guess Gung-Ho thought Pochita would be too broken if he had something like 2 more skill boosts. Pochita's leader skill is decent for XP farming, but if you're farming for XP, you probably want to use something like Celine. I guess Pochita stands out more in co-op teams, especially nowadays with infinite passes, since one player focuses on damage and the other on utility. So Pochita could cover a lot of bases with his resist, but I'm still very skeptical about their use. Pochita also has a 3 skill boost equip, which I guess Gung-Ho also thought it was kinda broken, and that's why they put a one-time use restriction. I don't know about you, but even if this had no restriction, I would still think that this equip is pretty average. So to summarize, I don't think Denji and Pochita are all that desirable. So I think it's hard to justify rolling for Denji, and it's even more so justifying buying him. Next is Power, who is the Overseeing unit. She's a pretty solid red BDP unit, and she can be a pretty solid leader. Although red BDP teams are not that popular right now. There's Metal Antares? Her active is really nice, as she can break her damage cap, and it has a pretty low cooldown void attribute and damage absorption active. So overall, Power's a really solid unit. And her equip is great too, as it has 2 skill boosts and a dungeon boost. It kinda sucks her active is not that useful, since you're most likely using this equip in a button farming team. If you put this on someone like Camilla, due to the 2 skill boosts, she might overcharge, and then you're stuck with a useless active. You might have a few carrots lying around, and she has an equip with 1 skill boost and 1 dungeon boost, and it also has a higher cooldown active, so you won't have to worry about overcharging certain units. Maybe if Meow's active were a skill charge or a button active, it would be much better. But still, it's pretty solid. I definitely see more use for Power than for Denji, so if you're someone that only buys bundles, Power's bundle might be my first option. And just like Denji, if you clear the Colosseum with Power, you'll have access to Denji and Power, which as a unit, I don't think it has that much going for it. This can have up to 8 skill boosts, but there's a lot of skill boost sticks out there. Their equip is probably more useful, and especially so in Super Latitude dungeons. This is one of the few equips that has 4 Team RCB awakenings, but if the 7C awakening won't make a difference in the unit you equip it to, you might as well use Odin Dragon's Tiara. Next is Kobeni, and while she doesn't stand out in the damage and utility department, she has a pretty good active to deal with board shrinkage in dungeons where you commonly see that debuff, like old UN4. All the good clerics in the game usually have hard OEs, so if you actually decide to use Kobeni, you would need to fit in another unit with a lot of hard OEs, so a unit like Sophism would be a really good option. Kobeni has a pretty strong equip, and it's very offensive focused, especially now since Rainbow teams are making a resurgence. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide any bulk, and the active might not be that useful early in a dungeon. But since recent and upcoming dungeons are a little bit more lenient when it comes to effective HP, those problems might be easier to overlook. Next is Beam, who is a double brick blue unit. As a unit, he's not that outstanding. He'll mainly be useful for farming non-super gravity dungeons. But the reason why he's placed above all the previous units is his equip. This is close enough to Halloween Paimon's equip, and even though it's missing 2 red OEs and 1 more skill charge, this might be better in cases where you need to turn a unit into a double type, like in Akasa and Rafin Kitty teams. Next, Aki, who is really good for farming some endgame dungeons like UN4 and UN5. In that sense, he's very similar to Misaka Mikoto from Dengeki Bunko. Aki can also be a replacement for a third Mikasa in a team, since he also has a Pierce active and generates enough light-ups on a 3-turn cooldown. And obviously, it's much easier to get multiple copies of Aki than it was to get a Misaka. In some instances, Aki is slightly better than Misaka. Since you are reliably matching 2 attributes, Aki is able to take the attribute Absorb Latent, but since he has no damage reduction in his leader skill, he's more susceptible to gravities. Aki's equip is really great, based on the killers alone, but on top of that, this equip also brings the first effective 50% gravity to NA. JP and Korea already had access to this unit from Gundam, but unfortunately we didn't get that collab. So that alone makes this equip really unique. Clearing the Colosseum with Aki also gives you access to this unit, which you can also exchange for with GFEs. Denji Aki is a pretty decent cleric that can give you up to 4 team HPs. And while changing an enemy's attribute for only 1 turn might not be relevant a lot of times, it might come in really useful for blue teams to deal with high defense green spawns. Most notably, Gonho put one of these in all UN5, probably to dissuade people from playing Kurotobi and sell other units. Denji Aki's equip is not all that good. It is a 10C and Cloud equip, but it also comes with a Poison Blessing, which might be really annoying since this gives you a passive Skyfall of Poison Orbs. There's a bunch of 10C equips out there, so this definitely wouldn't be my first choice, especially because that active is not useful either. If you do decide to exchange for this unit, be aware that the exchange materials will differ each week. And now for the final 2 units, which is Makima and Denji and Makima, which again you'll get for free if you clear the Colosseum with Makima as a leader. Makima is a really strong rainbow unit, and it's one of the better rainbow leaders out there. She really shines in 7x6 boards, and since she has a really low cooldown skill, you can put the leader swap equip on her. Her equip is pretty strong too, as he has 2 full resists, a team HP, and 2 OEs. Hades' equip has similar awakenings, but Makima's has 2 effective skill boosts. Denji and Makima are also a really strong rainbow unit that has a looping shield active. It also has a damage amp for balance type, but that might not be that relevant, though it will be useful to at least get rid of attack debuffs. It also comes with a 7x6 leader skill, so if you run them together with Makima, you can swap her in. Also note that this unit is also devil type, so it's gonna work really well in Akasa and Rafin Kitty teams. Their equip is not that good. Those awakenings are pretty bad, and the skill boosts and the box are easily replaceable with other equips. The active doesn't really stand out either. You do get 3 effective skill boosts with this equip, but there's so many better options out there, especially those that have more bulk, OEs, or better damage awakenings. And the same thing applies with this unit as with Denji and Aki. The exchange materials will differ each week. And that's all the units. I feel like all of them range from solid to pretty good, but there's much better units coming up in Demon Slayer and Hunter x Hunter. During this Super Gatfest, we'll be getting 3 free rolls. Unlike the first 2 rolls, the third one guarantees a Chainsaw Man unit, and therefore I would probably wait after this roll to decide if I wanted to roll more. If you like rainbow teams, getting Makima from the free roll would be perfect, since you would also get Denji and Makima, and in that case you wouldn't have to roll or exchange for Denji and Makima. And if you get a free Aki, then you might try to chase for 1 or 2 more, and I think that's the only scenario where I would roll, since there's not much value of getting dupes of other units, and not to mention that 60% of the time you won't be getting a Chainsaw Man unit. And also there's Beam's equip, which is really good, but if you have Halloween Paimon's equip, and if you don't care about the Add Devil type awakening, there's not much of an incentive in trying to get this. So if you decide to roll here, manage your expectations, and prepare for some disappointment. Regardless, if you wanna roll, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you guys next time. And please remember to like and subscribe. We're almost at 500 subscribers. Alright, goodbye.